welcome to the third annual SMG Podcast Marathon. It is now time for This Week in Geek. We're doing it live. Woo, woo, woo. And we're as unprepared as ever. So
says you.
So here's the deal. We are out of order already a little bit, which is fine. We had at this point it was supposed to be the League of Geeks, but they bailed. No, they didn't. He has a very special guest coming, and Ben is running a little bit late. So we called an audible. We decided to do This Week in Geek here, and we'll fit Ben in soon. And then we're also, after that, hopefully having Jack and Trumpet talk. If not, it'll be League of Geeks.
More League of Geeks.
Yes. So we will find out.
So much geek.
Let's say who's up here for This Week in Geek. We've got some regulars and a newbie. Not a newbie to the show, but a newbie as a regular. Who's over here?
Absolutely. My name is Chris Mao. I am co-owner of Blue Box Cafe, co-host of several shows, including this one, Disturbed.
And give your social media.
Absolutely. It can be found at theblueboxcafe.com or Blue Box Cafe or Blue Box Cafe 176 on social media.
Perfect. Yeah. And listen to Chris and I on Disturbed, the American Horror Story podcast. Next to you.
I'm James Wilder. I'm an author from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm also the host of Tales by the Blue Light, a podcast here. You can find me on Twitter at ARCBEATLE, ArcBeetle, and at jameswilder.com.
Yes, and he recently hit #1 in time travel books on Amazon with $10,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Congrats.
It's a great book. If you don't have it, he does have it here.
We know somebody
I'm sure
famous.
He will, even for the cover price, sign it.
That's true.
There you go. Next to him.
My name is Alil Kanitsa. I do the League of Geeks podcast. I also do many podcasts with Rob here on the Southgate Media Network. Enough Said. Well,
and Chris.
Well,
wow.
I did Enough Said with Rob. Then I was going to do, and with Chris, I also do This Week in Geek.
And all that live in the Blue Box stuff.
Yes, whatever we do here live.
No plugs ever.
And all these plugs, so many plugs.
Wait,
I need hair plugs.
I was going to say, are you going to take your hat off when you talk about plugs?
I need some. I'll do a GoFundMe for some hair plugs.
Oh, yeah.
Go hair me.
That's a Lil's new venture.
And you can follow me on Twitter at LOGEEKZ for the League of Geeks.
How much is each plug? You can do like a plug at a time. And
Hey,
get
Martha,
like
did you
50
turn this upright again? Did you turn that upright again? This.
We need the wide angle.
Yeah.
again.
Very wide.
Well, I'm never going to fit on here. So, sorry, Facebook, you're going to have to turn your phone sideways.
Or they
Yeah,
could just
other
look
way.
at me the whole time. I am pretty.
That way. There you go. Hey, look, we're all there.
I
Thank
got
you,
one
Ashley.
laugh, and it was my son.
Bye, guys.
So,
thank you.
I would like to thank Ashley and Tony. What's the name of your company again?
Schiavone Cuts.
Schiavone Cuts. Schiavone Cuts, who does do weddings and all sorts of video activity and filmmaking and all of the above. So for all your video needs, see Schiavone Cuts. They are making a documentary about this. So there's the other thing. Go get interviewed by these two. Talk about podcasting. Talk about the event. Martha's going right now. All right.
She might forget the question.
She will, and you might want to do a booger check before she gets back there.
Terrible. Terrible.
Snot
All
check.
right.
This is supposed to be
I
a
said that for the
G-rated
kids. I
podcast.
said-
They don't
Kids.
laugh at those terrible jokes.
No.
They're
Your
high
son
class.
is. Alex loves it.
Well,
All right.
look at him.
So, you know what? I am unprepared for this. The way This Week in
Exactly.
Geek works is we usually just make fun of each other, but we
True.
talk about geek news. What's happening in the geek world? What do we need to talk about?
James hit #1 on.
There's this amazing novel I just heard about by someone with my own name.
10,000 duns.
Yeah.
I hear there's a cat
You got
in
something?
it.
Well, there's what's the name of it? Is it DC Countdown? The event that's crossing over the DC universe with Watchmen.
With Watchmen,
Yeah,
yes.
what's going on with that?
Well, they just released a preview of the first 6 pages of it today, and
Wow.
Uh-oh. Did you read it?
yeah.
Sound bad?
Well, it's well written. It's just I feel like it's written by someone who is a good writer, but really didn't understand Watchmen.
Oh,
And
really?
so- yeah.
You know what? Even the cover art I've seen, like the Superman with Dr. Manhattan thing I saw, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Now you've read Watchmen,
I've
right?
read Watchmen. Yeah, I don't really follow the DC universe, so
Yeah.
I was interested about what they were doing here. I knew, the Flash is the story with the Flash and bringing it in, from Flashpoint. Bruce Wayne's father's Batman, all that stuff. I thought that was kind of intriguing.
Yeah,
to kind of have them together and have it be something revolving Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen.
It just seemed like it was going a weird direction.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually do. I can't wait for the series to be in trade so I can read it. I think if I go month over month, I think I'll kind of lose interest because it just won't pick. The story won't pick up because
Sure.
it seems like it's like with Watchmen. It's a long, drawn out tale. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to read. So to
Right.
me, it's a better read encompassed than a month
I
over month.
totally agree. As a graphic novel, The Watchmen is an amazing work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that works about it, though, is that, like, there's at the end of Watchmen, it's a complete work, but it leaves you with questions about things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kind of perturbs me about the preview they put up is it very instantly takes away tons of ambiguity and interesting things and just puts a bunch of answers which are really mundane to a ton of, like, questions the end of Watchmen leads you to think about.
Okay.
And it was just
Unnecessary.
disappointing. Yeah.
I mean, that really is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Now, I did like, and I know we talked about this before personally, I did like what I read of those Watchmen books that DC put out, where I thought I wasn't going to, and then I ended up enjoying some of them quite a bit. It did answer some stuff, but it also didn't bother me that same way.
Yeah.
This just, I have not been on board with this the same way. So you reading 6 pages and not being like, it's worth it, has me thinking I might wait, unless I hear it's great, and then I'll get the trade. But I might just, like, skip it altogether.
Have you been keeping up with this DC metal stuff that's going on?
I have not.
Metal. What is that?
I was curious if you. I don't know. I know a few people have just picked it up because of the cool covers, but I was curious what the story was about.
Yeah, I don't know. Once again, trades.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I don't like. I'm not big on the digital aspect. I just don't like reading comics on my iPad or whatever.
Oh, see, I do all
But-
the time.
But I prefer like a trade. I prefer to have. You have that tangible piece of art that you're looking at.
I agree that I do like
it's
it that
not,
way. But to consume the level that I like to consume at,
well, and that's
It's
true.
too
It makes-
much.
It makes sense in a cost perspective as
Right.
well.
But I'll tell you what I
your
don't
garage
like.
isn't big enough for all that.
right? I'll tell you what I don't
No, I
like.
don't need to come by with another carload of stuff home.
I don't like the digital, and this is weird because I know that a lot of people like it how it zooms in on things, and you can kind of you can set it so you can tap on a panel and it brings in the panel and you swipe and you go to the next panel. I prefer the whole page, so I like to read it on an iPad where it's got the full page.
Oh, yeah.
You can get the full experience.
I agree with that.
So that's how I like it. I do prefer the graphic, but you know what? I'm going to go. I'm already broke. It's going to kill me to go out and buy all those trades. Now, I do go to the library and get a lot, but a lot of the stuff, I love indie comics, and a lot of the indie comics, they're not there.
No.
Well, and a lot of them are publishing more online because
Right.
it's easier for them.
It's cheaper, too.
to get out and cheaper, yeah. And which I don't blame them for it, because
Yeah.
it gets.
If
their
we had to press
story
these
out.
shows in vinyl, it would cost a fortune, and nobody would buy it.
maybe 8-track.
8-track, yeah, my dad would
Ooh.
like that.
He might be the last person with one in the Elgin area.
Yeah.
The greater Elgin area.
Market them towards people who still
Rich.
drive diesel hatchbacks.
Diesel hatchbacks. Oh, Chris.
Sweet.
All right.
What's wrong with that? No.
What's wrong with it? It saves me money. And it's oily. Okay, that's like comic book news. We started with comic book news.
We never do because we don't read enough. I don't read, clearly.
I read Marvel U. Like every night, I read a few books from Marvel U. So I'm kind of it's funny, I'm making my way through that 2000 series of Hulk right now, which I haven't read Hulk comics really since I was a kid. And I didn't think I was going to be that into it, but I read the first, I was like, you know what, I'll give it a try. I'm about 6 deep into it. I'm actually really digging it. what I was finding is I was reading a lot of the event things, and they all turn into garbage by the end. Every one of them, they lose something by the end, and I'm like, has nobody read the book Story by Robert McKee? Does nobody understand the structure of beginning, middle, and end? The key being end? It seems like all that's gone out of the window. And then we all love, you love Alan Moore's work. He understands that, although Giant Squid was not the greatest, but he understands that.
Yeah, but the problem comparing it to something like Watchmen is Watchmen was its contained universe.
Sure. Yeah, but if you're
doing a Marvel thing, all of a sudden you got to continue to leave things open because you might.
But if you're telling a story like Original Sin, you can tell a story. They got to the last couple issues and you went, what? And I read the whole thing where it had all that extended stuff, and I thought maybe there's something I'm missing. No, it was even more convoluted when I read it that way.
No, I get that. I get that. I just think it's harder for the writers because they're planning these things out so far in advance.
Sure. I don't buy it. I'll tell you why I don't buy it.
Tied up and things get changed.
I'll tell you why I don't buy it. Because I've gotten some of these graphics from the library, like some of the Batman books. That this is just from their regular run. They'll throw 10 issues together. It's a contained story. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, that's not everything. I read one of the Joker stories that everyone was saying was so great. And in the middle of the graphic novel, there was like a book that was not even part of the story. And I'm like, what? But they're like, oh, well, issue 42, it had like one page that pertained. It made zero sense. Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about, and that's what seems to be happening with Marvel.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, the thing is you have, like you said, with these Batman stories, like some of my favorite ones more recent, like the Court of Owls story, I think is fantastic.
Was fantastic. Didn't you love that when you had to turn the book upside down?
It was great.
I was shocked when it got to that part.
We don't have that many writers out there, I think, that are working for these comic publishers.
I know one that just hit #1 on Amazon.
I do too.
I
Marvel,
know another one that was
DC,
just interviewed here that would love to write some of that. And, we have people in our network that are comic book writers that could do that.
I'm just saying.
And I'm not throwing them all under the bus. I have a feeling that it's just like showrunners. It's not necessarily the writer, it's the showrunner where the problem is. When corporate is dictating too much of it, that's when it becomes a big mess. Agreed. And they go, oh, we can't kill this character, or we can't do this. No, you need to.
Right.
You need to.
Well, are they a victim of their own success where they
could be?
They need content because Marvel's churning out stuff like nobody's business, whether it's movie or Netflix or.
Well, there was just a controversy. Here's a This Week in Geek moment. Did you guys read about the controversy at the New York Comic Con?
No.
There was a panel about Marvel books. Okay, it was Marvel's big panel, and some blogger or reporter, no, it was a store owner, stood up at the Q&A and said, basically like, what is wrong with these books? Why are you taking characters, like we get it that you reinvent characters, but it seems like Marvel just went, hey, let's make everybody a female now. Like he said, you're killing my books. Mm-hmm. He goes, I don't mind Thor being a woman. You had Thor Frog, you had, all these. But why every character are you going, here's how we'll be creative, we'll just make him a woman. Spider-Man did a better job with it. Spider-Gwen, interesting concept. Mm-hmm. Okay? Silk, great concept. I liked the Silk books. But when you're just taking them going, you know what, let's have Tony Stark die and we'll make it a woman. It's so obvious what you're doing. You're not telling me a new story. You're telling me the same story, but you're just changing the gender to try to make it interesting or trying to sell. Mm-hmm. That's where the problem is. And the guy said, how about coming up with some new characters or do something different? Give me my Iron Man stories. It doesn't have to be Iron Man. Do Ironheart as a completely different thing. And I thought it was an interesting thing. It caused a big ruckus in this panel.
Well, I can see that being a problem, and I can see comic book owners, because especially if the books aren't moving for them, it being a bigger issue. I get that. For store owners and everything, they're left with this inventory because they have to buy it up front and all that. But the thing is they are trying to do something different in a sense.
Right, and they need to stimulate something, but but why not? Like Marvel now, it's like New Coke. This is what they're doing. Remember how New Coke came out and everyone's like, oh, New Coke? And then they went back and they brought out Classic Coke. That was a ploy, okay? Marvel just did the same thing. They did all these characters. They're like, look, it's now, Jane Foster.
The Marvel Now.
And now they've got this new, like, what is it, Marvel Classic or something?
Yeah, I forgot. Because they're breaking off, like, a whole style would be Marvel Champions and then this. And
it's like, okay.
Which is, but that's what they do. These books have been in print. These stories have been going on since
Then
Marvel,
kill some.
the 60s.
And
but why?
Then kill
Why?
some.
People are still interested. It's just like when I look.
But if they're interested, why are you
when
changing
I hear the movies and everybody's like, "Oh, well, you need to kill these heroes. They need to have something to stand for." I'm like, "Why? Why are we killing these heroes?" When I go to the comic book store as a kid and I go month after month to buy a new book because I want to read a new issue of Spider-Man. I want to hear a new story. Just because he's been in 4 movies doesn't mean he has to die already.
I don't think he has to die either. I'm saying you got to up the stakes or you got to stop messing with it. Spider-Man's a great example. So, spoiler, they killed Peter Parker. And then
in the comics.
In the comics.
In the Ultimate Comics.
But then they brought him back.
Well, they didn't bring him back. He's not back in the Ultimate Universe.
See, I don't even know. And I read these. So there's the Ultimate Universe. There's the Now Universe.
Right.
There's the Classic Universe.
Right. So in the Ultimate Universe.
Is this the multiverse like DC has done?
Kind of, and they bridged them. So there's no more Ultimate Universe. So something happened. There was the big Secret Wars event. I didn't. So people out there who are listening, don't quote me. I didn't read the whole thing, so I don't know everything. But there was this big event, and the one.
Somebody write this down and quote him, please.
The one person one of the people that kind of that made it through into the proper universe or whatever they're calling it now, is Miles Morales. And he was the most popular one in the
So he is Spider-Man.
So he is one of the Spider-Man because Peter Parker's Spider-Man is still around here. And in the same universe, Miles Morales is working. And they know of each other. Miles takes care of New York. Peter is now more global.
Okay. And he's like a corporate guy now, right?
Peter, because the whole Dr. Octopus, and I don't want to get into that storyline.
Okay. So that's what's going on. Because I've read this.
He's become more of a Tony Stark type character.
This is where it gets confusing because I pick him up and I'll start reading through and I'm like, wait a minute. I must be reading Marvel Now. This is different than Ultimate, and then this is different.
Ultimate is dead.
So I'm confused.
The Ultimate Universe is gone.
It's gone.
I think this brings up another big problem that Marvel has, though, which is so many events. I mean, you guys just listed off how many events, and their most recent one was...
If you're going to do events, they better be strong.
Yeah, and their most recent event was Secret Empire, which started with huge sales, but by the end of it, it's Marvel's second lowest-selling event they've ever done, because sales tapered off that much.
Sure.
Yeah. And you're
Which
right.
is crazy because the movies are making bank. Why aren't the books? Why do the books have a spike and then now they're starting to dip? Because they're not telling a solid story.
Agreed.
That's the problem. Okay, so you brought up the point that, they can't. They've got too much. Then you do have too much. You need to trim the fat.
Well, they have. I mean, we haven't had a Fantastic Four book in a while. They started cutting down some of the X-Men. But the problem is.
But then we get into why
the characters that you have in the movies have to keep going because you know what, you can't not
because
have
Chris
the books.
Hemsworth.
Well, Chris Hemsworth is amazing. Sure.
So now you're talking Marvel
You're
small
talking about
screen.
the TV. You're talking about
but you know what? The X-Men stuff is. Legion was fabulous.
The first episode of Gifted, I really liked it.
But Inhumans, so far, is garbage.
I'm still out on Inhumans, and I'm behind on Inhumans, so I can't judge that one because I haven't watched it yet, okay?
Okay.
But I did watch the first one, Gifted. I watched some of the others.
And you don't think it translates? It's not the same universe, or that it just doesn't work as well?
I think it, in some cases, actually works better for today's generation. Our generation read it on paper. For future generations. But
Not Alil. Alil was born in 99?
79.
Okay. Sure.
So they're wanting to see it visually, where we had it on paper
Okay.
And I think that's why the things are dying off, and we are becoming, to take the people who are outside of our league up here, who are letting fall off and stuff. You know, it's not carrying over as well.
So it's not working for you as well. But
So print is not working as well as television for you. Like you're not invested in the characters,
and maybe they're not
same
investing in
way.
the print the same way.
Well, and
If they're not investing in the print, so we as a print generation are getting older, and they're realizing that they have to go to a media.
well, yeah, you
if
have
I
to
can-
follow where the media
well,
is. That's
if,
for sure.
If I can add a little counterpoint for a younger person here.
Yes,
I
young
mean,
person.
I mean, right now, people are reading more than they ever have before in history. Book sales are higher than they've ever been. But
Especially in time travel books on Amazon. Go ahead.
Number one.
Okay, but the thing is, I tried getting into Marvel Comics really big after the movie started getting big. I
Sure.
was interested in it. It's so incredibly expensive.
Exactly, that's what I was just saying.
I wanted to read something.
$4 for a book that lasts
$4
20 pages?
Yeah, $4 for a book that you end up reading, and sometimes $5 and $6 that takes you like 10 minutes to get through.
Right.
Like you can.
Which is why Marvel U is great if you like the digital thing.
Yeah.
It's great. DC is way off mark by not having it, and all these indie guys like Dark Horse and Image should absolutely have those type of services. You know how they say they service us to death? Oh, we're paying for Netflix and Hulu. Tell you what, I will pay for Marvel every month. I will pay for DC every month. I will pay for Dark Horse every month if they had them. I did do Comixology, but they only offer a couple of things in that, and then you're subscribing and you still pay $20 for the graphic on there. Why am I subscribing?
Right.
You know, I might as well wait until there's a sale at Tom's Comics and go buy it there. Chicago Comics has a discount thing downstairs. I'll go get it there. Because I do want to read all these things. I want to read everything.
Scared
But
me.
there used to be something about getting a comic. Now, I was never really into it, but when I was, there was that, I'm looking forward to that Tuesday comic coming out.
Yep.
And now it's like, I want it now and I want it now and I want it all the time.
That's why it's Marvel Now.
But I'm just, but you're saying that,
Will.
but you can't. There just isn't enough. I mean, when we were kids, you got your comic book or whatever it was, and you're like, this is great, or your Sports Illustrated, whatever that was, and that kind of held you over for a while. Now it's like, well, I got this 20-page book.
It's hard to keep that attention.
And then what am I going to do next hour?
But the problem is with all this is just cost of goods. I mean, now we're going to the business piece of it.
Yeah.
We're going into the cost of actually now artists and writers and everything are getting their due, which
is how we want it.
Exactly. But when we were younger, or even before me, they weren't getting anything. They were getting like 20 cents a page to do all that work.
Right.
I mean, it was almost ridiculous. There's a great documentary out there. It's on Hulu. It's about
Batman,
Bob
that
Finger,
Batman
the
one?
Batman one. Yeah, it's
really good.
The actual he's the actual co-creator of Batman, Bill Finger, and Bob Kane completely screwed him over on the Batman rights. It's a sad documentary, but it's really
excellent.
How the
and he
comic
created the
industry
Joker.
was. So definitely check that out on Hulu.
Hulu, Hulu. It's like a pay service,
Like Netflix, but it's different.
really great. I love Hulu, and they do have some originals like this Batman. Just get it for that, and you'll be hooked. There's not there is a Superman documentary. It's called Up and Away, I think it's called, where it does the history of Superman. I think that's on there. That's a really
that is
good
as well.
documentary, by the way.
Or Amazon. I'm sure you can find these on Amazon Prime and stuff.
I'm sure they're on Amazon also.
So, but I mean,
They're
like,
around.
definitely check that documentary out. You'll learn a lot about the history of this. This is the reason why we're now paying $4.99 a comic. We want everybody to get paid. We want everybody to get their due. We're rah-rahing it, but then now we're like, well, I can't afford now to buy four because I buy 4 issues a month.
What are
$20.
What are issue sales? The numbers of units? Is it
And
down or up?
they're way down compared to what they were because
Right.
the boom happened in the 90s where
Right.
an issue that was number one, we're talking about millions of copies.
Right.
Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands and you're number one. Like I can't
Right.
remember the exact
Well,
number.
it's like
There was
TV.
one
It's
that
like
was-
TV ratings. The same thing
Right.
happened.
Well, exactly. But again,
But see,
it's like
okay,
cost of
that
goods.
brings us back to another point. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the first hour of this marathon, talking about being an indie artist and all that. Okay, so yes, the artists are getting their due, okay? And it's raising the prices. I'm okay with all that. the issue is we've got a situation where the consumer could be supporting the indie artist and these artists through like Patreon.
Yeah.
And so I love Paul Pope. Okay, Paul Pope's artwork is amazing. If Paul Pope was able to put out his stuff and say, "Hey, I have a Patreon page, and here's what I'm doing, and you can get my books this way. Give me $5 a month, and I'll produce." You know, you end up getting essentially a couple of comics that way. Mm-hmm. Totally worth it. I think that there's a dividing line. I think that just like what we saw with the music industry, we have the same thing about to happen with this. We're watching the bubble burst. So you're talking about how there's more people reading. There are. But how do we as the consumer that love this stuff need to be directly influencing with our dollar that way?
Sure.
I'm tired of giving my money to the big corporation that is going, here I'm giving you content, but I'm giving you partial content.
Mediocre content.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I am hiring these people, but I'm also dictating what they do, and it's stopping them from creating what they really need to create.
And we're seeing this now. We're seeing this in cinemas. I mean, we're seeing movies that deserve the big openings not get them.
Right.
You know, we're looking at, like Chris and I talked earlier about Blade Runner. I mean, this opening weekend for Blade Runner this week is going to be about $35 million. The movie deserves a bigger opening than $35 million. And it's a $150 million budget. So what's going to happen if it doesn't make its money? It's done.
It's done.
You know?
Right.
And we will not get another story in this universe. They actually did a great job.
But we might get White Chicks too eventually.
But exactly. But that's the thing. So we're gonna go for the mediocre product that because it costs cheaper to make and do it. But we're not backing, you know, the artists. We're not backing the visions that deserve to be backed.
And look at it and convert. You know, I want to say piggybacking on that, the DC thing. Those DC movies. I'm sorry. The DC movies do pretty big numbers and they make money, but not what they think. So we're all like, it's a disappointment when they spend $200 million on a movie.
Because they made $800 million.
Right.
Like, oh, they make $1 billion, so it's a failure.
I mean, and it's not because there's all these other movies like Blade Runner probably will not make its money back in the box office. It will in video.
Which will end that universe for a while.
It might push
globally. It back. They might cheapen it up next time. But here's the problem is with these big corporations, they keep tossing bad money over good money. So like, that's why the DC movies aren't making money for them because they've spent money trying to make other movies that have failed.
Right.
You know, and what they're doing is instead of calling it a failure and reinventing it, they're carrying that failure over to the next movie.
Sure.
There's a great documentary on that if you want to know called Death of Superman Returns, where they talk about the movie that
That's a great one too.
Nicolas Cage was supposed to be Superman back in the 90s,
right.
And how much money they invested in a movie that they never made is almost ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then that money from that movie carried over into the Superman Returns movie that Bryan Singer did, which was not a good movie, but that budget came in.
I disagree. I like that one. Okay. But Superman Lives would have been horrible.
Yeah.
You watch that documentary and it's like, why is he fighting a giant spider?
You know what, though? I would have wanted to see it. You know what? I think back in 96, 97 when
I would have been all over it.
I think we would have loved it.
But I think in retrospect, it would have been Ang Lee's Hulk again.
With long hair?
Wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt as Clark Kent, I would have been all for it. Let's go. Let's do it.
You know what? If they made that now with Nicolas Cage, I'd watch it.
National treasure because he's a national treasure.
They need to start a GoFundMe and let's do it. Tim Burton, let's get it going.
Nick would do it cheap. I would.
I don't need Tim Burton doing it though. I
want Burton because it was Burton's vision.
No, I want to see Nicolas Cage doing it, and I want to have
Burton will do it right.
I want Weird Al to make it. I think that would be amazing.
Weird.
We'll have him cut the trailer.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. I'd be in.
I think we're at time.
James Gunn makes it. All right, we're at time. It's 4 o'clock. Time for, if he ever comes in here, the next show. So thank you, guys. That was awesome.
Thank you, everyone.